the whole point that I'm trying to make is that there is an illusion in the West that you can defect. Like, you can defect from the liberal order in the West because you are free to do so. You have the freedom. I mean, this is the argument that these liberals make, or these ex-Muslims make. They say, like, look how superior the liberal world order is, or liberal system is, because in a liberal system you can defect and no one has a problem with that. You can disassociate with whoever you want. There's no problem with that. But in Islam, they're so insecure that they have to punish defectors, they have to kill the apostate, blah blah blah. This is the moral comparison that's being made, but the reality is that you don't have the option to defect from the liberal world order. You actually do not. And in the Muslim world, we already talked about Egypt, we talked about Palestine. What about Afghanistan right now? Afghanistan is being starved to death. Their resources have been seized, their bank accounts have been seized, and they are in midst of a humanitarian crisis that's been created by the West. What happened? Well, Afghanistan decided it was tired of a U.S. occupation, and it didn't want to be a part of the U.S.'s global hegemony, or the West's global hegemony. It defected from that. Well, now they're paying the price. Now they're starving to death. Now they're having hundreds of thousands of people die, brutal deaths, because they defected from the liberal world order. And there's actually very little protest that we see from these ex-Muslims, actually, or liberals in general, about, okay, this is a crime. No, they justify. They say, well, that teaches Afghanistan that if they don't make the right choice, they don't want to set up the kinds of schools that we want and the type of LGBT sex education for children that we want, well, you have to pay the price. Okay, nothing is free. This is the kind of attitude, genocidal attitude, that you find from these so-called enlightened Western or liberals and ex-Muslims and so forth. But even beyond that, look at domestically. Look at what is happening in the U.S. Look at what happened with the elections that took place at the beginning of this past year. And there were protests, okay, legitimately or illegitimately, protesting the results of the presidential election. And those protests were called and labeled an insurrection. And those people who protested were put into prison. Their assets were seized. They were cracked down on. Many of them their lives were destroyed because they defected from what the powers that be. They defected from the governmental power, and the kind of control regime that is being now, when it comes to surveillance, when it comes to the CVE programs, countering violent extremist programs, these are just expanding massively, so that even expressing certain kinds of views will get you the label of extremist and put you on a watch list. And that becomes a means for the government to surveil you, to seize your assets, to put you on a no-fly list, to potentially you, all kinds of the draconian measures to control you and punish you for defecting from a particular set of ideas and a particular set of values that they are imposing on their own population in brutal fashion. If you have an opinion contrary to whatever the health authorities state, if you defect from what health authorities state, okay, then you will have your life destroyed, potentially. And this is you'll be fired from your job. You won't be able to travel. You won't be able to go visit friends or family. You can't put your kids in school. You can't even buy groceries. How can you live? Well, you can't defect. You can't defect. You're a part of this. and if you defect, you have to give up your life. So why can't we understand this type, the consequences that come from this type of defection, as even more intrusive and invasive and despotic than anything that is found in Islam? I mean, there's no comparison.
And actually, one imam here in Prague was arrested for carrying a book about Tawheed and put on a 10-year trial, which is a book from Bilal Phillips, by the way, who's not any extremist. And but he actually won the court case, but they didn't apologize. The state didn't apologize, but they let him live, but they closed down the mosque. And they came in with AK-47 and like treated everybody like a terrorist. And there was just one book about Tawheed, which is, come on, Tawheed. It's not like, it's basics, right?
Yeah, but the people, like, the illusion here is that, oh, people will say that, well, there was a court system operating on liberal principles, and at the end of the day, freedom of thought won the day, and they released him. Like, this is the kind of thing that the liberal will respond with. And our response to that is to say that, well, the only reason that this imam was allowed to walk free is because he didn't actually challenge the power structure. Like, he wasn't able to actually pose any kind of threat to the power structure. But if the national authority and the government and the executive branch were weaker for whatever reason, because of economic situation getting worse in the country, or there being a war, or there being some kind of instability that makes the government weak, they would have cracked down much harder. And this is what we see throughout these Western countries that are supposedly so tolerant and enlightened. As soon as the power is actually threatened, then that facade goes away completely, and they kill people. They are killing people, and they are brutalizing their national population to stay in line. You cannot defect. And I don't know about you, but I experienced this, and I feel the boot on my neck, just crushing me every day that I live in these countries. It is not pleasant. And I don't know how others experience it, but this is my experience. And they say, oh, well, why don't you just move to Afghanistan? Why don't you just move to a Muslim country? Okay, yeah, move to Afghanistan so I can be starved to death, so my children can die of starvation because of the boot that's also still on our necks in Afghanistan. The boot is everywhere. This liberal hegemony is everywhere. This is the octopus that has its tentacles all over the globe. And we're constantly told that, oh, this is a superior system of freedom and enlightenment, and it's Islam that's backwards and despotic. No, I'm just so offended at how they have completely inverted reality to make people experience what is so clearly false as true, and what is so clearly true as false. Imagine, like, whatever, like, I don't know, the Taliban, for example. The Taliban could also say that, oh, we give everyone freedom and equality as long as you've bought into the Sharia. As long as you fully bought into the Sharia, then yeah, you can worship Allah how much ever you want, and you can say Allahu Akbar freely, all that you want. You have all the freedom that you can have as long as you've bought in completely to the Sharia. Then you have that freedom. That's exactly what liberalism is doing. They're saying that as long as you are liberal enough, then yeah, vote in your elections. I mean, the best example of this is look at Palestine, or look at Egypt. Okay, the West says, yeah, we want the Muslim world to have democracy and elections. That's what government should be all about: democratic representation. And they will have elections in these countries, and the people will vote for Islamist parties.
Yeah, Muslim Brotherhood, right?
Muslim Brotherhood or Hamas or whatever. And then what happens? They get bombed, or there's a coup, a Western-sponsored coup. Why is that? Because, and this is the Western diplomats are very clear, or the puppet masters are very clear about what's happening. You can have democracy, but you have to make the right choice. You have to choose parties that are sufficiently liberal. And if you don't, then we will have to crush you. We'll have to literally brutalize you and bomb you until you are going to make the right choice. So this is a farce.